Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Spirit Chats with Kat. Before I get started with the things that occurred in my life during this point in time, I wanted to touch base with you on a couple of things. I've been told that you can listen to my podcast on a few other places as well. So, of course, YouTube. We're here on YouTube, but we are also on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, and Podchaser. So I don't know if any of those are more convenient for you, but you can also listen to me there. The second thing that I wanted to touch base with you on is some of the things that you might hear behind the scenes in my podcast. I say behind the scenes, but I wish that were so. Unfortunately, you can hear them loud and clear on my podcast. So let me tell you what is typically happening on any given day when I sit down to do my podcast. You might hear a dog drinking water out of the water bowl. Apparently, my dog gets very thirsty when I'm trying to record a podcast. I say my dog. It's actually my son's dog. But either way, he gets really thirsty when I'm trying to record a podcast. Also, you may occasionally hear a cat meowing, probably for help, because the thirsty dog also likes to harass cats. So that's probably what makes him so thirsty. So you may hear that going on the podcast. I think it was on the last podcast, I actually had to put him in his kennel because he just would not stop harassing the cat. And it was starting to feel like bedlam was breaking out around me. So no sooner did I put him in his kennel and get back to the podcast, then he started pawing at the kennel door to get out. So, yeah, that's, welcome to my life. Welcome to my life. This is what it is. So, anyway, now on to the most important thing, the podcast. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about a few things. This, I would say, is a span of about, 5 years in my life, and it really wasn't very active. So this was one of the times where not much was happening. And again, I have no real explanation for it, but we're going to kick this off talking about a trip that we made to a Civil War park. It was called Guilford National Military Park, and it's outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So during this period in my life, I was about 13, I would say 13 to 14 years old during the time that this occurred. So we took a trip actually to Johnson City, Tennessee. And from Johnson City, Tennessee, my stepfather had decided that he wanted to go over to this military park because he was a military buff, a Civil War buff in particular, and he wanted to go over there and check this place out. So we drove over there, and it was myself, my younger brother, my stepfather, and my mother. And we got to the military park, and we kind of checked stuff out a little bit. And then I decided this was going to be boring. So, and at 14 years old, 13 years old, as soon as my parents said, we're going to walk around, and I heard the word walk in there, I said, we're going to, what? No, thank you. So I'm sitting on a bench, a park bench, just hanging out by myself. And my brother had gone with them, but eventually he came back and came up to me on the bench, and he's like, sibling chit chat, which is really more like harassing each other. And he, decided that he was going to go over to the bathroom, and then he was going to head back out and find my parents again. So, and nothing was going to convince me to get up and walk around for hours, which in hindsight, I really wish I had, because it really would have been a lot more interesting than I was giving it credit for. I probably was just hormonal and grumpy at 14 years old. So 13 years old, whatever, is between 13 and 14. So, anyway, my brother disappeared. I would say maybe about 300 feet away from the bench I was sitting on. There was the restrooms. There was a small building with male and female restrooms. And he went over there and disappeared into the restroom. And I'm sitting there for a few minutes. And then someone approaches in my direction. And it was, he was young. He had brown hair, and it was tied at the base of his skull with a black ribbon. And he was dressed in military dress, although I had never seen anyone dressed like that before. You can recognize it. It just has a look about it that you can recognize that. Especially if you kind of grew up in a military household, which we did, then you can kind of recognize it when you see it. So he was wearing a blue jacket, and it was long. The sleeves were long, and it came in at the waist, and then out from the waist down was a little roomier. It was split in the back, and he had on a blue waistcoat, and he had on white pants. I say white, but if you want to get technical, they were more like eggshell color. And he had on boots, knee-high boots. So I watched him, and as he was coming toward me, and I thought to myself, oh, there must be some kind of reenactment going on around here today. Although we hadn't seen any other vehicles whatsoever, zero. And if you've ever been to a reenactment, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of noise going on, and you may smell smoke in the air, you'll hear a lot of gunfire. Nothing was going on. It was totally quiet. Totally quiet. So, as he approached me, he made eye contact with me and nodded just once. Like, dipping his chin as he looked at me to acknowledge me. And I smiled at him because, he must have been, I think he must have been about 18, 19. And to me, a young teenager, this gentleman was very handsome. This was a handsome young man. So, of course, I smiled. So anyway, he continued on. He just had this feel about him that he was no nonsense. He was all business. And he continued in the direction that he was headed in. And he didn't give me the feeling of being cocky at all. Just really self-confident. Really self-confident for a young man who looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, which I found that interesting because I had never been exposed to anyone so young that had such confidence. So he continued on in the direction that my brother had gone, toward the bathrooms. And he went around the corner of the building, and I just assumed he was going into the men's restroom, which my brother hadn't come back out yet. So I sat there going, uh-oh, stranger danger, what should I do? Should I go poke my head in the men's restroom? And I'm like, no, that's an invasion of privacy. And so, all this turmoil going on inside of me again as to what is the right thing to do here, and concerning protecting my brother, but then being embarrassed if if there's nothing to protect him from, So while I'm sitting there waging this inner war with myself, my brother comes out of the restroom. And I said, did you see that guy that went in there? The guy in the military uniform, the old school military uniform, did you see? He's like, nobody came in there with me. Again, acting like I was a moron, because I'm always saying these random things. And to him, none of this stuff is happening. So then I was like, well, what the heck? And I sat there as it slowly dawned on me that what I had just seen was a spirit. Because he never came out of the bathroom. Not ever. And I even watched to see if he would walk around the other side of the building and be gone. And nothing. Nothing. He never came out from there. So I did realize that that was a spirit. So, during this period of times, if you look at the things that happened on the previous podcast to me, and now here we're starting off another podcast with me being visited by spirits that are not connected to me, right? So whether this young man is connected to me or not, I don't know, because I didn't recognize him at all. And usually, even if someone that I don't recognize approaches me, that I don't recognize, a spirit, I should say, approaches me that I don't recognize necessarily, or that I can't see them, I can't lay eyes on them, I can tell by the way that they feel that they're a part of me. They're connected to me. I didn't get this feeling from this young man, so I really don't think that he was connected to me at all. And at the time, I didn't feel that he was a familial connection. I didn't feel that he was an ancestral connection to me. So as I began to experience these visits by unknown spirits to me, I didn't understand why it was happening. Okay, the ancestors, I totally got that, right? Because I died. I went to where they were. I met them all. They decided they wanted to watch over me for the rest of my time here, So I made that connection with them. But for people, aka spirits, to be approaching me that were strangers to me, I was so confused by that. I didn't know what they would want with me. I didn't know why I could see them. I didn't know why they could see me. I didn't know why they were approaching me. I had no idea why these things were happening. I think I have an idea now, and I'll tell you that later in this particular episode. I'm not gonna string you along with that anymore. I will reveal to you why I think that I get approached so often. So, after that, it began to dawn on me, that I'm getting approached by every person out there that wants to is approaching me. Every spirit out there that wants to is approaching me. So I actually just recently did some research on the uniform that the young man was wearing. And I, at the time when this happened, because we were at a Civil War site, I just assumed he was a Civil War soldier. But when I did the research on the uniform, according to documentation online, the way that he was dressed was actually a Revolutionary War soldier. So like someone in the Revolutionary War. So again, even to this day, I'm a little confused on that. Like, why am I at a Civil War park seeing a Revolutionary War soldier? And while I love history, because history is a part of us, it's a part of who we are, it's where we came from, and it's in our DNA. If you think about it, I'm gonna get scientific on you here. We get DNA from our mother and our father. And who did they get DNA from? Their mother and their father, who got DNA from their mother and their father. So imagine all the mixes of all the people that donated their DNA so that we could be here today. So, I just find that very, very, very interesting. So, anyway, thus continued my struggle with being approached by people that I didn't recognize, spirits that I didn't recognize. And, it made me... There was just so much confusion. And you'll find that too. This is a very, it's a very confusing gift to have, I would say. And I would think that anyone that, even the experts at this type of gift, when they started out, they must have felt so confused. Unless they had someone to talk to that was experienced, which, as we know, I didn't have. So around this gift, there has always been, or I won't say has, because I don't feel confused any longer. But for the longest time, there was a lot of confusion for me, because I'm trying to figure all this out on my own, and I'm basically winging it, So, now let's move on from the Civil War, or the Revolutionary War soldier. And after that trip to Johnson City, my parents ended up splitting up. And we moved to a small town in Indiana. And at this point in time, I'm 15 years old, and we had just moved into a rental. And this place, I still to this day love this little house. It was a great little house. It had wood shingles on the outside of it. It had a basement that was done up in the sense that I had, drywall and things like that. And there was a bed down in the basement for anybody that wanted to sleep down there, when the shuffling happened because somebody moved in with us, then there was always the bed available down in the basement. So, this particular night, I had fallen asleep in the bed down in the basement. And at some point, I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was the figure of a man standing at the end of the bed. And he was just standing there staring at me. And that's what woke me up. Because you know how when, like, if you fall asleep on the couch and your dog comes up and sits down and is staring at you, you wake up, right? If your kid comes in and is standing next to the bed and is staring at you, you wake up. So this person at some point came in and was standing at the end of the bed and staring at me, and I woke up. How long he'd been there, I have no idea. And, we had just moved into this house, and there's some dude standing at the end of the bed, staring at me in the basement. So, of course, I got freaked out. And we've talked about how I don't scream, just every sound dies in my frozen vocal cords. So that's exactly what happened in this situation as well. And I closed my eyes real tight. And I said, "You need to go away. Go away. I don't want you here." And I opened my eyes, and he was gone, so that I couldn't see him, but I still felt him. I felt that heavy, heavy feeling. I still felt it. So I pulled the blankets up over my head and basically held my breath until I got so exhausted I fell asleep or passed out from oxygen, lack of oxygen, whatever it was. And when I woke up, the next time I woke up, it was daylight, and I hightailed it out of there and never, ever, ever slept down there ever again. So the next morning, because I'm thick sometimes, I should have known better, but I told my mom. Okay. And then she became very upset and called the landlord. And immediately I thought, oh no, because I knew it was not a human being. I knew it was a spirit. And she was on a tear and called the landlord and demanded to know who else had a key. And of course, he got really offended because, if you're on the up and up as a landlord, you're not trying to go into the house that you're renting to your tenants unless they call you and tell you that something's broken and needs fixing, right? So naturally, he was offended at the implication that he had given a key to someone else or hadn't collected all the keys from the previous tenant. Goodness knows what was said to the poor man, but he naturally got offended and told my mother in no uncertain terms, if she feels that uncomfortable, she should just find another place to live. Yikes. So, of course, it came back on me. I got blowback from that. So, and then it was like, oh, the family weirdo's at it again, which in hindsight, this stuff is super funny. But at the time, I felt horrible because I was really sensitive and I felt really horrible. And, it was put to me that you could cause the family to lose our dwelling. And of course, I felt bad. I felt badly about that. So now we're going to jump to a few years later. We lived there, I think, 8 years in that house. And it had come time for us to move out. And I had a cockatiel, a female cockatiel. And he had a male. And I had asked him, would he like the cockatiel because I couldn't take care of her where I was moving to next. And he had said yes. So long story, I can't even say short now. It's already too long. But I took the cockatiel over to his house and I apologized to him for that phone call all those years ago. And, he let me know that, yeah, it did upset him. And then as I was going out the door, he told me that the previous tenants had said that they kept seeing a man in the house. So it wasn't just me. And again, I felt vindicated, like, yes, I am not losing my mind. Thank goodness. And I felt so thankful to him in my heart and soul for just admitting that the other tenants had the same issue. They were seeing someone in the house and footsteps and things like that. I didn't hear footsteps that I can remember, at least not that I couldn't attribute to someone else in the home. So I don't know if that was going on or not. All I know is waking up and seeing the man standing at the end of the bed. So now I'm going to tell you what happened to me a few years after that. I had moved up to Brigantine Island in New Jersey for one summer. And I was coming back down to Indiana, and I had taken the New Jersey Turnpike. And it was the middle of the night, and I was so tired. Oh my goodness, I was so stinking tired because I've been driving for a while, and I knew I had to stop somewhere and catch an hour or so sleep before I could go on. And I was trying to do this drive all in one shot. And I didn't feel safe stopping at a rest area or anything like that. I didn't feel like that was safe in that area at that time. And during that time, there were parking pull-offs. And, you would see semi trucks pulled off in these. And cars, you would see cars pulled off in them as well. And I thought, okay, I am going to pull over myself and get just an hour or two. That's all I need. And then I can finish out the drive. So I pulled over in one that no one else was parked at. And I thought, okay, good. I'll have this to myself. I can relax. I don't have to worry about being approached by someone. So I'll be able to get some sleep here. So I turned off the engine and I shut off the lights. And that is when I realized how dark it was. Like crazy, crazy pitch black dark. Okay. And it was hot. The humidity was just oppressive. It was in, let's see, I think it was in July, the end of July, the beginning of August, right around then that I was coming back, and it was so hot. So I rolled my car windows down just a little bit to get some air in. And even though I felt uneasy there, I tried to convince myself that the only reason I felt uneasy is because it was so dark. And I tried to explain away the heavy feeling that I had and the feeling of being watched. So I climbed into my back seat and I laid down, and I was just getting ready to fall asleep when right next to my ear I heard, "Amy!" And I immediately was wide awake again. And I felt like, okay, this is a warning. I'm getting out of here. So I jumped up into my front seat, started my car, and took off and hightailed it down the road and didn't pull over again until I got to where there was a farmhouse a little ways away from the road, and they had a bright light out in their yard that pretty much lit everything up like the 4th of July, so that I could just get an hour's rest. And as soon as I slept for an hour, I was up and gone again. But, the voice in my ear I recognized as that of my guide, my ancestor, my guardian. So I'm so appreciative to her because I feel like she saved my life. I really do. I don't know what was going to happen. I do know at that point in time there were reports of hitchhikers disappearing along the New Jersey Turnpike. And later on, they found out that it was a trucker that was kidnapping them. And I won't go into, this podcast isn't about that. But anyway, I do believe that my female ancestor, the one that watches over me and protects me, she saved my life that night. I really believe it. So, those are the things that happened to me during that period of time. And as you can see, just not super active, just not an active period in my life. And I look back on what was going on in my life at that time, comparing it with what was going on at other times. And it really, there's nothing that stands out that says to me, oh, this is why you didn't have much activity. There's no rhyme or reason for it as far as I know. I'm sure that once I'm with all my ancestors and I become an ancestor, then I will understand all of it. So, but, it for the longest time was a struggle for me, the being approached by non-ancestral individuals. And I started trying to figure out why. Okay, yeah, I have the family gift. Yes. But it really didn't feel like that's all there was to it. because I just always had this gut feeling that there was more to it, and it was connected to the fact that I died. And I started thinking that I must be a beacon for them. So imagine somebody that has 1 foot in the world of the living and 1 foot in the world of the dead. And I say dead, I feel like that's so disrespectful. 1 foot in the world of individuals that no longer have a human form. And being seen by both sides. So human beings can see me because I am a human being. And those that have passed can see me because I also have passed. So I think in a sense I belong to both worlds, which that in and of itself makes me feel like I don't belong anywhere, if that makes sense. You know, I don't completely identify with one or the other. So I feel like this situation is rare because, of course, the more advances there are in medicine and medical practices, there have been more and more and more people who have died and come back, just like I did. So, you know, our little group is growing all the time. It's growing all the time. But it still is relatively rare. And I think that because I have passed away, that I'm some sort of beacon to spirits. And I get approached by spirits of all kinds. I mean, I've already told you about the red man. You know, that's something that I've not seen since. I have been, of course, approached by my ancestors. I've been approached by this soldier. I've been approached from some guy in a basement, you know. And he actually, the guy in the basement, I should tell you, I think they refer to them as shadow people. It's just, he was just the shape of a human, and it was just darkness. Where a human form would be was the darkest shadow I've ever seen. So, you know, I've been approached by all different types of spirits, and I'll tell you about another one that I've never seen before and never seen since in a later podcast, which surprised even me because I thought by this time, you know, I pretty much have a good idea of what's happening here because of everything that's happened. But this one was even a new one to me. And I'll tell you right now, without sharing my age, I'm over halfway through my life. So this was new. And I found it incredibly interesting. I can't wait to share that podcast with you, but I'm not going to give it away here. You'll have to tune in for that one. So now, along the way, I have figured out how to set boundaries with the spirits, because as I said before, I have to set boundaries. Otherwise, I feel like it's just very tumultuous. I feel like I'm living in a world of turmoil, and I'm a person that likes order and structure and planning. Very type A. Just ask my husband, who likes to wing everything, so I'm learning a lot from him. It's awesome, and I don't say that sarcastically. I absolutely love it. Winging it can be very fun and a lot less stress than, you know, than having to have structure all the time. But I got totally off track there. Um, you know, I have to set boundaries to preserve my sanity, so to speak. And I always try to do it respectfully, though, no matter what shape the spirit approaches me in. Because again, why they come in these different forms, I'm not really sure. I'm sure that will be revealed to me at some point. But they can't help it any more than, I can help having freckles, or you can help the way that you look when you look in the mirror. They can't help it. They really can't. So I have to remember to be respectful to them. And I have actually found that if I'm respectful to them, they are very sweet and they will do what I ask them to do. I think I've only had one instance to this day that did not listen to what I said. And I'll tell you how I coped with that. But again, that's a later podcast as well. Typically, the energies that I get are very positive and protective in a sense, regardless. So, oh wait, I just remembered another one. So I've had two. One I totally understand, and the other one, just not a good energy. But again, a later podcast on that. So you're going to have to stick around to find out what happened there with those two and how I dealt with it. But definitely set your boundaries and set them respectfully. So, a soft approach, as I said, I've found works best, because thinking about it from the perspective of someone that almost passed up their opportunity to go to the next place and and was about to remain here in limbo because I was afraid, because I didn't recognize the person coming to escort me, then I feel protective of these spirits that are here on this earth. So again, as I said, they've been hurt enough. I'm not trying to do further damage. I'm just trying to communicate to them that that their timing is not good for me, or that the proximity is not good for me, that they need to back away a little bit. Because they get so excited, I'm telling you, they get so excited because somebody can actually sense them or see them or says to them, I'm acknowledging you're here, that they just want to run up on you. And I have had contact as well. Like, more than just the pressure, I have had full-on contact, which you'll also hear about that later on. And that can be alarming if you're not expecting it. That can be startling. And if you haven't had as many experiences as I've had to this point, it could be scary. If you're a young person and you're experiencing these things, this can be really scary. So it's super important for you guys to set your boundaries, but do it respectfully. Talk to them the way that you would want someone to talk to you. So you wouldn't want somebody to say to you, get out of here. I don't want you here anymore. You would want somebody to try to understand, right? And just say, look, I'm not sure what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. I know you're not meaning to make me feel this way, but this is the way that it's making me feel. And it just really makes me feel uncomfortable. So here's what I need you to do. Okay? And I've even told spirits, I don't know what it is that you're trying to convey to me. So some spirits find it best to approach me when I'm asleep. Just tell me. Let me fall asleep and tell me. Don't crowd me, because that's going to make me feel uncomfortable. But just when I go to sleep, talk to me and tell me what it is that you want me to know. And then I'll do my best to either make you feel better about it or let you know, what to expect next, or is it too late for you to move on to the next place? I will answer your questions, whatever their question may be. If they tell me when I'm asleep and I wake up with that in my head, then I will immediately address it with them and say, oh, hey, okay. So this is what you do if you want to go on to the next place. You're not stuck here, So another way that you can set boundaries with them is educate yourself on your ancestry. I mean, really educate yourself on who it is that you came from, whose DNA is in your body. Really, really get to know them. Get to know where they lived, how many kids they had, Educate yourself on what life was like at that point in time, what they may have gone through, the experiences they might have had. Ask if you have a grandparent that has old photos and things like that. Oh my goodness. What a great resource. Go to them and ask them to tell you all the stories they can tell you about their childhood. They're going to love it. It's going to do two things. It's going to make them so happy that you are interested in their life. And it's also going to bring you closer to your ancestors. And ancestors are protection. Okay, so educate yourself to start building that connection to them. Because I'm telling you, our ancestors are all around us. They are always here. They are coming and going, okay? Once we go on to the other place, we're not stuck there. We can come and go. We have jobs to do. We have people that we can check in on as we're performing our duties. They are not gone. And all you have to do in order to draw them in close to you is educate yourself on them. You can call them for help, and you don't have to, bear in mind, these are spirits. So we're not talking physical ears or any of that. I randomly will speak to them out loud, or I may speak to them in my head. Either way, we have conversations, and they know what I'm saying. They know when I'm calling them for help. And I have had to do it multiple times in regards to other spirits in particular, and also in very difficult times in my life, I called for them and they came. So, do what you can to bring them close to you. Now, although I grew up in a very religious household, I am not religious myself. If you are a person that's religious, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. If you're a person that's not religious, obviously I don't have an issue with that either, because I'm not either. But I know from my background, being Irish, of Irish descent and of Scottish descent, mostly on my Irish side, there were Irish Catholics. So I wear what some people call a St. Christopher Traveler's coin. And, St. Christopher is the patron saint of travelers. One of the things he's the patron saint of is travelers. And I wear this St. Christopher medal around my neck. And this brings my ancestors close to me because when I wear it, I think of them. And it's my way of paying my respects to them. So that's one thing that I've done. And you can find other things to do as well. Like if you have an ancestor that was a blacksmith, figure out what point in time he was a blacksmith, what he might have made, and go get you one of those and say, hey, so-and-so, do you recognize this? Whatever it takes. And they will draw near because they're just waiting. They are waiting for recognition from us. And just because they no longer have physical form does not mean they're not still our family. They are still our family, and they will still have your back. Trust me. I know from experience on this. So now, being respectful of spirits, this is taking me to something that has been on my mind for a while. I'm a big fan of ghost hunting shows, especially if I feel like the people involved are not just doing this for entertainment, but they are actually trying to help the spirits. Because being somebody, again, who was almost stuck in limbo myself, I would hope that if that had happened to me, someone would want to help me pass on and help me get to that place that I needed to be, and not just poke at me for entertainment's sake, So there are some people that I feel have the best interests of us, the living, and the spirits at heart. And it shows in their shows. I'm a big fan of kindred spirits, and I'm so sad that I've binged on the Discovery, I binged on it on Discovery so much so that I'm caught up with the whole entire series, and there's no more episodes. I have to give a shout out to Amy Bruni on that show. She is the epitome of someone that wants to help the spirits and wants to help the families. So I have to say, if I were to be involved in anything like that, I would be another Amy Bruni. So I have to give her kudos for that. I mean, I'm very impressed by that in her and in that show. So you may want to check that show out. I'm telling you, it's an excellent show. It really is. And there's another person that I always felt that way about, but I can't remember his last name, so I'm not gonna talk about him in this podcast. If I remember his last name, I will give him a shout out on one of the podcasts and tell you who it is so that you can look into him as well. I cannot stomach a ghost hunter who provokes the spirits. I just can't stomach that. It literally does turn my stomach because, again, they've been in such a tough situation for so long, and we've all ignored them or, tried to run them out of what was their home originally, and how painful that must be. That must be so incredibly painful. I get choked up just thinking about it, because that could be you. That could be me. It could be any of us. And how would we feel? It could be them when it's their turn to pass and somebody comes to them that is an ancestor. And because we've been taught that death is the end all be all and nothing beyond that, so we're not looking for ancestors, and someone approaches us that we don't recognize, how many of us are going to choose to stay here? Because this is all we know. How many of us will make that choice? And then to watch ghost hunters provoke spirits and mediums who provoke spirits, it just makes me angry, sad, stressed. I feel the whole gamut of emotions when I have to watch that happen. That's no bueno, my friends. So, that's how I feel about that and why. Now, let me look at it from the ghost hunter's perspective. If you are someone that hasn't died and you didn't have the experience that I had, I can see why you would approach it that way. I really can, because we've been taught that they're scary, right? That they're scary, they're out to get us, all this stuff that, isn't necessarily true. And if they're out to get us, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. And I've only in my, over half of, 2/3 of my lifetime I'm probably at now, I've only had 2 instances where I've been approached and I felt that they were being disrespectful. Not just that they were disrespectful in the sense that they would not listen to what I was asking them to do because of how they were affecting me. So, as far as out to get us, we're a curiosity. I think they're wherever they are, whatever they're doing, they may be walking through a room and bam, there's a living person. And it's like, oh, well, how do you do? What are you doing here? This is my world. Where did you come from? How come I can see you? That sort of thing. And they're going to stand there and stare at us, trying to figure us out, just like we're getting all our equipment out and trying to figure them out, right? Or you're listening to this podcast maybe and trying to figure them out. And I'm still trying to figure them out. I mean, like I said, I think I have everything figured out, and then curveballs that get me thinking again. So I have learned so much, but I know there is a ton more that I need to learn. We haven't even scratched the surface with this because we've been denying there's an afterlife for so long. So of course we've only scratched the surface. So now let's talk about an angry ghost per se, or poltergeist. I've never had an experience where I could go, oh, this poltergeist activity. But I think it's just in the way that I view the activity, because I have had very, very odd things happen, but I think it's just in how I view it. So if you're in a haunted, and I say haunted, I don't even like that word. I feel like that word is very disrespectful. If you are in a place where spirits remain, then if you're open to it, you are going to see things happen. You are going to have things happen to you. You're going to hear conversations. You may see a shadow dart by. You're going to have all these things happen to you. And if you are somebody that goes to those locations specifically looking for that, and then you antagonize, and maybe this is a location that many, many ghost hunters go to, and so many ghost hunters like to provoke, because it's like a horror movie, right? We watch horror movies because we like to be scared. So these people, they're going to go in and provoke stuff because they like to be scared, or they like to be alpha over something that scares them because they don't understand it. That's a human way to be. It really is. I mean, we like to be alpha over animals. We like to be alpha over other people. You know, it's for whatever reason, that's a natural part of who we are. And some of us like to be alpha over spirits as well. But the spirits aren't being the aggressors. The majority of the time, they're trying to avoid the aggressors, aren't they? So if you watch a show where not much is happening, and they're getting frustrated because this is made for TV, right? So then they're going to start provoking, and they're going to escalate their provocation until something happens. Well, that spirit individual, they have feelings too. So you're provoking something that feels. And sometimes you're provoking, you don't know if you're getting fight or flight, right? And what did I say? Just because you're dead doesn't mean that necessarily that your personality changes, right? Especially if you don't move forward and you don't go on to that other place, then your personality doesn't necessarily change away from a person who, when provoked, they went into fight mode. So then the spirit starts doing all this stuff because they're mad, right? Scratching, whatever. The scratching thing, I've never experienced that myself, so I'm a little on the fence as to how much reality there is to that. I know they can move objects. They can hide stuff from us. These are the things that I've experienced. Walking, dragging furniture, all of those things I've experienced. So I know for sure that they can happen. If you're provoking somebody that when they were alive went into the fight response, you can expect them to respond the same way if you're provoking them when they're dead. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. Dying is not a miracle cure for our grouchiness, our hang-ups, our lack of self-control, those things. Dying is not a miracle cure for that. So why would you expect them, why would you provoke them and then expect them not to do something to you because they're hurt or they're angry? Like, they're walking around minding their own business. You know, they've been living in this house for centuries, and here you come, and you're yelling at them, and you're saging the place up, and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. And that would hurt my feelings. I mean, I told you in a podcast about how I was 4 years old and I was basically being evicted, and I was super hurt by that. So, you know, if you are doing that to a spirit, that's going to be hurtful. That's going to be hurtful. So before you do those things, try changing your perception on their approach to you and recognize that they don't know how to approach you in a way that isn't scary and, you know. And I think some of them as well, which this would be a natural human response. If you run away from them screaming and scared and thinking they're attacking you, eventually, you know, after hundreds of people do that to them, or even 10 people do that to them, they're going to feel like, well, if I'm going to be accused of it, I might as well. Let me just stir the pot here a little bit, you know? Let me shake things up a little bit here because I'm being accused of it anyway. So these are all natural responses. And why should natural responses just cease because we're dead? They don't. I'm here to tell you they don't. So, you know, poltergeist activity, I feel like that is a phrase that has been coined and used to frighten people, to escalate the fright factor. When really you're dealing with somebody that has been so ignored or disrespected for so long that they're just over it. They're over us. They're over all of us, and they're going to show us. And I wonder sometimes if the approach was different, how would things turn out? Like I said, you know, growing up, my approach was not what I would hope it would be. And I feel badly for that because I feel like I should have been there for them and not frightened. But again, I have to forgive myself. I didn't know any better. You know, I was dealing with something that I had to keep hidden or be ostracized for. So, you know, I just wish my approach had been different. And I wonder how many of these spirits would escalate to this angry activity if we didn't just funnel through their, you know, one after the other, aggravating and provoking. Because I'll tell you this. If I, for whatever weird reason, decide to stay here after I pass and I don't go on to that beautiful place that I know is waiting for me, if I delay the process because I want to watch over my husband or my son or my cat or whatever it is at that point in time, if you come through my area and you provoke me, it may be on like Donkey Kong because I am an individual with a fight response to provocation. Do I try to shove that down inside and ignore it? Yes, I do. But that's my natural inclination. If I feel like I have nothing else to lose, I don't know what my response would be. Honestly, if I'm a spirit and I've got nothing else to lose, I really don't know what my response would be. I guess it would depend on what your approach is to me. So I don't feel it's right to be disrespectful to spirits just for the sake of TV. If you watch Kindred Spirits, you can see how they are respectful and you still get a great show out of it. So, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's plenty, right? That's plenty for this podcast. And I really, really hope that, if you're feeling nervous and you feel like somebody's standing behind you and you feel like all these things are happening to you, draw your ancestors in close. Whatever way you have to go about it, draw them in close and talk to them. Create that bond with them and let them provide you protection, because they are just waiting for us to do that. And they love being acknowledged. You don't know how much it means to them for us to acknowledge them. So, and on that note, thank you, ancestors, for everything that you do to protect me and to guide me. So, just a little shout out to my ancestors there. So thank you all. Once again, thank you all for joining me. And I really hope that, that this helps. Whether it helps with your relationships with spirits or your relationships with humans, whatever it is, I really hope it helps you somehow. So stick with me and you'll find out some more interesting things in my next podcast. And coming up within the next few podcasts, it's about to get super busy, super busy. So you won't want to miss out. All right. Thank you.